Welcome back to Bold Clarity, where we slow the noise, tell the truth, and make room for the people we are becoming. If your habits and your goals are telling two different stories, this episode is for you. Last week, we talked about building trust with ourselves by keeping our word in terms of what we say we're going to do and how that translates into self-discipline. And this week, we're going to look specifically at our habits and the person that we are building as a result of those habits. So I am excited to add another level of specific action around becoming this person that you want to be. So a few maybe months ago, we had someone who came in and spoke to our team, and we were talking specifically about our morning routines. And in that conversation, she said something really important, which is your habits are votes that you are casting for the type of person that you want to be. I don't know about you, but I never thought about habits in that way. The thing about habits is they can seem so small and insignificant, and in reality, they can be so quick that we don't even realize what the impact is of those habits over time. For example, once upon a time, I was the type of person that as soon as I woke up in the morning, I reach for my phone and I start scrolling Instagram or TikTok or whatever social media I chose. And in reality, that choice, I don't know, that was maybe a second or two that I took to make that choice. And doing that over time, it really does have an impact. Now, in the moment when I made that choice and said, I'm just going to pick up my phone, I wasn't thinking, wow, me picking up my phone and going straight to social media every single day and having that be the first way that I really use my brain in the morning. I wasn't thinking that's something that, you know what, that's going to have an impact that I don't want. I was living in the moment, making a choice, and just kind of rolling with it. And that's the thing about habits, is a lot of the habits that we have, we are so on autopilot when it comes to what we're doing that we don't even realize what impact is this having over time, right? So going to that example of me picking up my phone every morning and going straight to social media, what I didn't realize was that I was starting my morning a lot of time, depending on my algorithm, with like drama and chaos, right? And not even personal drama, but other people's drama that's on the internet. And what that was doing for my mindset and how I was starting my day was just having me come from this position of chaos, this position of sometimes negativity. And those were not things that I actually wanted to be. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with social media. And when you take the time to think about over time, the span of a month, a quarter, a year, you doing this same thing, the impact is huge. And so when the speaker made this comment about the votes that we're taking for ourselves or casting for ourselves with our habits, it really made me think about, wow, how many habits do we have that are casting votes for a version of ourselves that we don't actually want to become? And a lot of times our habits are so habitual in that we do them without even thinking about the fact that we're doing them. And so we don't even know what is being caused as a result of this. We don't even know how much of our time is being spent on these habits. We don't know how much mental capacity it's taking for us to do these habits. And so the first thing that I want us to take some time to even recognize is, well, what habits do we have right now? And do those habits that I have right now, are they voting for the person that I want to become? Now, if you're like me, there's probably been some times in your life where the votes that you're casting with your habits are not the votes for who you want to become. And as we have this conversation today, I'm going to think back specifically to a time where my habits, where the things that I was, implementing as routine were not in alignment to the type of leader that I said or claimed that I wanted to be. And it's so interesting when you can look back and you see how what feels so insignificant in the moment can end up having such a significant impact on who you are. The good news in all of this is that when you take the time to observe these habits and really break down how you're spending your time, you have an opportunity to realign anything that may need some adjusting. And so personally, I love my calendar. Okay. Anyone who knows me, especially in a professional manner, knows that my Google Calendar, that is how I live my life. Okay. I put everything on there. I have multiple calendars. I color code all the things. And I can think back to this time where I wasn't really this leader that I wanted to be. And I could point to these habits that I'd implemented that, when I really think about it, they were more so aligned to the type of leader that somebody else told me I should be, or the type of leader that somebody else was. And again, not that any of those versions were bad, and they weren't me. And so in this moment, I had this realization of, I'm looking up and the results that I want are not the results that I'm getting. I want to be an engaged leader. I want to be a people-centered leader. I want to be relationship-based. And that's not really what I was doing. And back in that time, again, calendar is scheduled to a T. But what I'd filled that calendar with were events that weren't centered around people, especially people on my team. They weren't centered around growth. They weren't centered around building skill. I can remember specifically during this time, my team meets in person every Tuesday. And I remember getting some feedback about how those meetings were going, because we would spend so much time deep diving in data and specifically looking at the areas where maybe we weren't doing great, and not enough time actually, collaborating and growing together. And someone brought it to my attention. And at first I was very defensive about it. But when I thought about it, and I thought about, wow, I've gotten into this cycle of every Tuesday, I'm going through all this data and making this pretty presentation that really is not actually helping us get to the place that I know we can get to as a team. And it's definitely not causing me to show up as the type of leader that I want to show up as. And when I looked back at how many Tuesdays had gone by where I got up in front of my team and talked about the same data and the same issues, instead of using that time to build my agents up, it was kind of scary, because we'd gotten so far away from the type of leader and the type of team that I knew that we could be and that I wanted to, build. And if you would have just asked me on any given Tuesday, did you have a good meeting? Yeah, we did. It was great. Talk through data. Everybody knows exactly where they are. We know exactly what we need to do to get better. We know exactly what we need to fix. That felt like a productive meeting. People showed up. We had conversations that had to do with real estate. We looked at data, and then we went home. And who that brought out, that version of me, that's not the version that I wanted to be. And it was a hard moment for me to look at how much time I had spent casting votes for this version of Asia as a leader that was not actually the version that I wanted to be. And when you think about the level of intentionality that comes with planning your day, planning your week, planning your month, and the time that it takes, and then the time that you spend, it is costly on a personal level for you to be doing things that are counterintuitive to who you want to be. And yet, so many of us fall into a routine that we've gotten used to that we don't even really think about anymore. And we don't even realize how much of a gap we have created between who we want to be and who we are actually being. And when it comes to your calendar, right? There's a lot of times where things are put on your calendar by you or by someone else, and maybe you don't get around to every single thing on there. And you have things that you protect on your calendar. You have things that when you think about how you're scheduling your time, you're saying, no matter what, I'm gonna get these things done. The things that you protect on your calendar, on your schedule, in your planner, those are the things that you're placing value on. And so the other piece to this is you may be protecting the wrong habits. So maybe you are doing some of the stuff that's aligned to who you want to be, and you may be spending way more of your time doing the things that are not. And so you're still not getting the results that you want, the result that you are hoping for, because you are not spending the amount of time that you really need to cast the votes that are for the right person that you want to be. And so at this stage of evaluating your habits and evaluating how you're spending your time, it's important to ask yourself, all right, what am I doing with my time? What am I doing with my time? Okay. Look at your calendar from last week. Look at your calendar from a month ago. Look at how you are spending your time. And then think about the things that actually matter to you, the things that actually move you in the direction that you want to move, and check to see, is there a gap here? Are my goals different from my habits? Are those producing two different types of people? And we can have goals all day long. We can say we want to do things to become a certain type of person, but it really comes down to your action. And so evaluate your action. Evaluate what you are protecting in your time. Evaluate what things you're missing that maybe you know that you really want to do or that you really should do, and you're not doing them. Once you survey where you are, the next important thing is for you to emphasize, for you to prioritize the things that matter the most. And this is where you want to go slow, because you want to really make sure that you are thinking through what actions you should be engaging in, not what somebody told you to engage in, but actually taking the time to think about what does this version of myself do? Those are the things that are most important. Those are the things that you prioritize, and nobody else can make the decision for you regarding what are you prioritizing? What are you putting on your calendar? What are you committing to? What habits are you building to get you to where you want to be? You should start with these things. And sometimes they are the things that feel the hardest or the most overwhelming. But a lot of times they might be the most important things. It might be the most important vote you cast for yourself. And so when I think back to my leadership journey and I think about what I said my priorities were, which were to be an engaged leader, meaning I was actually interacting with my team, to be relationship driven, meaning I was taking the time to get to know the people on my team and figure out their strengths and figure out their weaknesses and create plans that supported them and who they wanted to be. There were things that I knew I could do that would contribute to that, but I wasn't doing them, and I wasn't doing them consistently. So looking back, a no-brainer is, having one-on-ones with your team as a team leader. If being engaged as a leader is something that is so important to you, then you need to actually talk to the people on your team. And I looked up and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's some people on my team that I am maybe meeting with them once a month, maybe about their performance, about their goals. And that's not enough. That's not enough for me to be the type of leader that I say that I want to be. That's not enough for me to engage on a deeply personal level and show people that I care about their success. And so for me, going back to consistent one-on-ones, which also I tailored to where people were in their real estate journey, right? There were some people that where they were, the best thing I could do is let them do their thing. And so maybe I didn't need to meet with those people every single week, but I was intentional about engaging with them in a way that made sense. And so if it was once a month, it was once a month. On the flip side, which this was the case more often than not, were these agents who we're meeting on Tuesdays. I'm beating them up about their performance, but I'm not taking time to talk with them enough and to help them grow. And for a lot of them, it turned into, oh, wow, I probably should be meeting with you at least once a week. If I want to be engaged, I want to meet you where you are, then this is a commitment that I should make, is to be intentional about that and get into the habit of having conversations with the people that I work with more frequently. Another thing that was really important to me and has always been important to me is education, right? And as agents, we would have conversations about the importance of educating your clients, right? And sitting down and, explaining the process and all of that. And I realized that I was missing the consistent education piece in how I was showing up for my team. And so those Tuesday meetings that once upon a time were beat up sessions where we looked at our data and how much we weren't doing that we needed to do, I then switched those to opportunities for us to work on specific skills. And I even got input from the agents on the team on what skills do y'all think you want to grow in, right? And that's what we then decided we would spend the majority of our time doing. So now I'm taking the time to help with having specific conversations in this group setting where we can collaborate and we can come up with solutions instead of just talking about the problems. That's a lot more aligned to this engaged leader that I wanted to be, that grows or helps people to grow into who they want to be. And by the way, when I look back at, how I was spending my downtime, a lot of it was, responding to emails and, again, looking at data. And what I realized I needed to do instead, if I wanted to be this person, is I need to spend some more time planning so that I can be intentional about the opportunities that I have to get in front of my team. And so those time blocks that I had where I was sending emails, responding to emails, or texting the agents asking why they haven't done XYZ, I traded that for, okay, I'm going to take this time and like when I was a teacher, I'm going to break down what gaps we have, and I'm going to plan how we're going to close this gap when we get the opportunity to be around one another. That person that my habits were building, where I am talking to my team on a more consistent basis. And by the way, as a result of me implementing these one-on-ones more frequently, there were plenty of times where, for whatever reason, maybe we wouldn't have a one-on-one. But what I saw was that I was just in general talking to the agents more, even in a more casual way, if it's on the phone, if it's in our group chat, because I was making a vote in being intentional by saying, okay, we're going to do these one-on-ones. And then I was creating an environment where communication was important. Okay. So there was also the trickle down effect of these positive actions. And that started to really shift the team. So I'm doing these one-on-ones. I'm taking the time to not use the data as a way to go beat people up, but to really sit down and interpret the data and figure out the gaps so that I could then plan how I'm going to help people close these gaps, right? I am taking the time when we do get to be together and saying, all right, here's what we're going to go through specifically. Here's what we're going to talk about. And here's why it's important. And when I was doing those things, the results I got from that compared to the person who wasn't really talking to the agents on her team very often, right? Was spending a lot of time on the computer, looking at data on my own, right? And jumping to conclusions. And then spending the precious time that I got in person with agents on my team to just talk about how we weren't doing well. Completely different outcomes. And different outcomes weren't because in one environment I had a skill that I didn't have in the other environment. The outcomes were different because what I spent my time doing changed. I changed my habits. That caused my mindset to begin to shift. And then it caused different results. Had I not taken the time to pause and think, what am I doing? How am I spending my time? What habits do I have that I maybe need to shake? I would have continued to operate where I was telling two different stories with my words and my actions. The encouraging thing about building habits, about these votes that you're making for yourself, is that you get to be the owner of this. You get to be in control of what you spend your time doing. You get to be in control of what votes you cast for who you want to be. And because you get to be in control, if and when you see that you're telling two different stories, you get to reel it back in and adjust so that those things are the same. Who I'm saying I want to be is the same as who I am because I'm actually doing the actions that align to that. And That's a gift. That's such a beautiful thing that you get to decide that, and you get to choose that. And then you get to decide, how many votes am I going to cast for this version of myself? And this is when you can really level up, right? All right, so maybe I'm spending 50% of my day casting votes for this version, 50% casting votes for the version I don't want to be. What if I spent 80% of my time casting votes for the person I want to be? The impact is monumental. You start to see your capacity to grow and to show up differently, and you get to see over time how much control you have over the person that you want to be. And I think if you can figure this out, and if you can take the time to honestly survey what habits you have right now, I think that you will believe, because it'll be the truth, that you truly are capable of becoming whatever version of yourself you want to become. And it just goes down to, what of the millions of choices I make within a day, a week, a quarter, a year, a lifetime, what are those choices pointing to? That's amazing. I have had several conversations over the last, honestly, 2 or 3 weeks with people who I love and respect, who are older than me and I would say much wiser than I am. And I've noticed a theme in those conversations, which they've all been, people who've been watching the podcast or they see the reels. And these very wise, they all also happen to be women, have talked about how maybe they waited too long to start essentially casting votes for the person that they want to be. And they look up and the life that they're living is not bad. It's not bad. But maybe it's not what they actually want. Maybe it's not who they're actually called to be. Maybe they're not living in their purpose. And luckily, all of these women that I have talked to have had the opportunity to pivot. And I just wonder, what would it look like if in our younger years, we took the time to survey our voting, to survey what patterns, what habits we have created, and what type of person we are building. Because if you can create the space for you to survey, you can come to the realization a lot quicker that maybe you're telling two different stories. Maybe you are living a life that's making a wider gap between who you are and who you want to be. And how amazing would it be for you to realize that and then act on it? How amazing would it be if you could start that process now? If today you could say, all right, let me look at who I've been casting votes for. Let me look at who I've been building with my habits. Let me look at who I've been promoting with what I'm doing. Let me look at that. And if something's not quite right, okay, let me change it. I just think that we would be happier, more productive, more bold people if we didn't wait to think about what life our habits are creating. So, to recap, number 1, I suggest pulling up your calendar from last week and starting the process of looking at how you spend your time. Ask yourself, does this look like a calendar that would belong to the person that I want to become? If it does, awesome, woohoo. If it doesn't, ask yourself, what type of person am I building with those habits? And then what do I need to do differently? What do I need to add in? What do I need to eliminate that's going to get me back onto the path of building the person that I actually want to be? And then I would ask, am I casting enough votes for the person that I want to be? Is enough of that happening to make a difference? Going through this process, it's going to give you confidence that not only are you talking the talk, you are walking the walk in your growth journey. And what a beautiful gift it is to be in alignment in that way. I hope that this was powerful, helpful, caused you to think a little bit more about how your actions are impacting your life. If this episode resonated with you, please like, follow, and subscribe at @bold-clarity on YouTube. You can also check me out on Instagram. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Until next time, be honest, stay intentional, and choose bold clarity.